Taipei demands answers after Beijing confirms it's detaining a Taiwanese man on fraud charges. Lebanon experiences its deadliest attacks in decades after Israel unleashes a barrage of airstrikes on Hezbollah targets. Beijing announces a series of new stimulus measures to boost its slowing economy. Plus, bringing greenery to the concrete jungle. Innovators at the London Design Festival showcase an eco-friendly solution to the urban heat island effect. A warm welcome to Taiwan Plus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Taipei is demanding more information after China confirmed it's holding a 22-year-old Taiwanese man in Shanghai on fraud charges. It's the latest in a series of cases involving Taiwanese nationals being detained across the strait. Reese Ayers is live for us in Taipei. Reese, Taiwan has made it clear it's not happy, but what's it asking for?
Well, Leslie, Taiwan is looking for answers as China has not been very transparent about this case. It actually took Taiwan actively requesting details about the man's whereabouts before China even confirmed that they were holding him, detained on accusations of fraud without any further details. And now Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council is asking China to expand on those accusations, and they're expressing their dissatisfaction at China's lack of communication. Now, piecing together details from the man's friends and family and from what China has been drip-feeding Taiwan, we know that he's a 22-year-old man, surnamed Guo, and that he traveled to Shanghai with two other people at the end of August, and that he disappeared soon after arrival. Mr. Guo's sister's suspicions were aroused when she received a message from her brother after he'd arrived in Shanghai on Instagram, but those messages were sent using Instagram's disappearing message function. Mr. Guo's mother has also come out to say, to defend her son against these accusations from China, saying that he would only get involved in fraudulent activities if he was forced to. Now, there are concerns that Mr. Guo may have been caught up in a job-seeking scam, and Taiwanese authorities are now treating this case as a potential case of human trafficking.
Reese, China has a track record of detaining Taiwanese nationals, often giving vague reasons for doing so. What can previous cases tell us about what to expect from Mr. Guo?
Well, the timelines of these cases can vary greatly, with some being released after brief negotiation periods, whereas others are detained for months or even years. For instance, the case of the pro-democracy activist Li Mingzhe, who was detained in 2017 for 5 years, finally released in 2022. Unfortunately for Mr. Guo, an analyst that I've spoken to says that the conviction rates in these cases tends to be quite high. That is, unless there's something that the PRC government is willing to do in exchange for, referencing a case there in 2021 when China released 2 Canadian citizens in exchange for Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou. And now that analyst went on to say that China sometimes uses cases like this to threaten the Taiwanese population or to put pressure on the Taiwanese government. But with so few details from China about this most recent case, it's really impossible to say when or if Mr. Guo will be able to return home.
All right, well, thank you for keeping tabs on that story for us, Reese. That was Reese Ayers reporting live from Taipei. Almost 500 people have been killed in the deadliest day of attacks in Lebanon in decades, with Israel pounding Hezbollah targets in the country in an extensive bombing campaign. Israel warned civilians in Lebanon to move out of harm's way before explosions rung out. Rosie Greninger reports.
Israeli strikes pummel the southern Lebanese coast, with smoke bellowing from the hillside. The relentless barrage came just hours after residents in the area were warned to evacuate.
We advise civilians from Lebanese villages located in and next to buildings and areas used by Hezbollah for military purpose, such as those used to store weapons, to immediately move out of harm's way for their own safety. I want to repeat, move out of harm's way immediately.
Roads out of the zone were packed with cars, with many people travelling towards the capital Beirut, which is also being impacted by Israel's assault. Residents describing chaos as they tried to get out of harm's way.
نحن صار ضرب ركبنا سيارة وضلينا جايين وما بنعرف شيء ورانا ايش فيه والله ما بنعرف ضرب طيران خرايب رزاي زرارية فما ضل حدا بالعام كله نسمع.
The Israeli military said it struck about 1,300 positions of the Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah. They claim to target members hiding among civilians with precise intelligence-based strikes, but the result hasn't been without civilian casualties. Most of the bombs landed southeast of the Lebanese city Sidon, but Israel also struck areas 150 kilometers into the country, claiming the lives of around 500 people, including women and children. Lebanese officials say it's the country's highest daily death toll from violence since the 1975 to 1990 civil war, and it's expected to rise.
الحصيلة الحالية لأنه للأسف الوضع لا يزال يتطور هلا في اعتداءات عم تصير في منطقة البقاع.
Hezbollah and Israel have been trading daily fire since the outbreak of war in Gaza on October 7th, 2023. As the militant group stands in solidarity with Hamas, who are fighting Israel in the enclave. Tensions here escalated last week when thousands of communication devices used by Hezbollah militants exploded over 2 days. Israel's reasoning for this latest bombardment to stamp out Hezbollah rocket sites.
Hezbollah has been using you as human shields. It placed rockets in your living rooms and missiles in your garage. Those rockets and missiles are aimed directly at our cities, directly at our citizens. To defend our people against Hezbollah strikes, we must take out those weapons.
Hezbollah responded by launching hundreds of rockets and drones into Israel, vowing to continue their campaign until there is a ceasefire in Gaza. While Israel has not ruled out a ground invasion, increasing fears this could trigger an all-out war in the Middle East region, and leaving world leaders calling for de-escalation.
There is no military solution that will make either side safer. With the well-being of civilians on both sides of the blue line and the stability of the region at stake, space must be given for diplomatic efforts to succeed.
But with both Israel and Hezbollah continuing to trade blows, this situation is expected to further escalate. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Japan has lodged an official protest as Russian military planes violated Japanese airspace on Monday. Japan's defense ministry says Russian planes entered its territory 3 times. One plane breached Japanese airspace close to Rebun Island north of Japan's Hokkaido prefecture. Japan scrambled its F-15 and F-35 fighter jets and fired flares at the Russian jets for the first time. Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio has said Tokyo will resolutely defend Japan's territory. The airspace violation comes as China and Russia hold the second phase of their military joint exercises in the EC, also known as the Sea of Japan. Singapore's former Transport Minister S. Iswaran has pleaded guilty to corruption charges. He was convicted on 5 counts, including accepting bribes like valuable tickets to various events, including Premier League football and a Singaporean Formula One event he helped organize. Iswaran is the first Singaporean minister to plead guilty to corruption in a country that prides itself as one of the least corrupt countries in the world. Prosecutors are seeking 7 months in jail and a fine when the court sentences him on October 3rd. China's central bank has announced stimulus measures to fight deflation and disappointing economic performance. It plans to reduce the amount of cash banks need to hold in reserve, freeing up around $140 billion for banks to lend. It's also cutting mortgage rates and the central bank's own lending rate. Chinese stocks and bonds rose after the announcement. Depending on the situation later in the year, interest rates for loans may be lowered even more. For more on China's new stimulus measures, our reporter Jeremy Olivier spoke to Alicia Garcia-Herrero, chief economist for Asia Pacific at Natixis.
The overall goal of this new raft of stimulus measures is to hit China's 5% GDP growth target for this year. But taken apart individually, what does each of the measures do exactly?
Well, the cut in the reserve requirement ratio, this RRR, as we know it by now, is all about liquidity. So liquidity is very important because there's an increasing lack of liquidity in the banking sector in some areas, especially for those exposed to developers. The developers are a small amount of total loans, but for some small banks, they were very exposed. And more importantly, local governments, real estate from the local governments is literally 7 times larger than developers. So just to give you a sense of the dimension of, and because many of these vehicles are not really paying back, banks are starting to feel the pinch. Then the cut on the loan prime rate, which is the benchmark for mortgages, I think that's long overdue. As inflation is high, in China, real interest rates are very high because there's deflation, at least in producer prices, in GDP prices. And in CPI is basically close to zero. Thus, mortgages are hard to finance because of this situation.
China, of course, has been facing a number of very difficult economic challenges. It has been for months. So how aggressive would you say that these new measures are in addressing those issues, especially compared with how the Central Bank of China has acted in the past?
It's not aggressive yet. Bear in mind that there's so many things that they need to do. This is just the beginning, in my view. I mean, if you want to see a major change in growth prospects, you need to see much more. Just to note that interest rates or sovereign bond yields continue to go down. Yes, stock market is going up. That's a good signal. But stock markets compared to the bond market signal do react to any sign of stimulus because they're starving for it, if you see what I mean. I mean, that sign doesn't mean it's sustainable. It only means that they're happy about the temporary stimulus.
What other steps do you think should be taken by China as it seeks to improve its economic performance for this year?
I think they need to design a comprehensive program. They need to say they're going to spend on fiscal. How? I would expect them to say it's targeted to the consumer. So not just infra expenditure or just, additional issuance of local government bonds as they usually do, quotas. I mean, no, we need to know where they're spending the money, and that must be the consumer.
That was Natixis chief Asia Pacific economist Alicia Garcia-Herrero. Executives from U.S. drone companies are in Taiwan looking for local corporate partners. Their visit comes as Taiwan's defense ministry confirms it's testing a domestically developed first-person view drone. These kinds of drones are meant to be faster and more maneuverable. Louise Watt has more.
A new focus of Taiwan's armed forces. Soldiers are remotely testing drones carrying explosives. They are first-person view or FPV drones, controlled by an operator in real time through special glasses. Small drones like these have become a key weapon in Ukraine's war against Russia.
FPV 无人机因为它的速度以及它的这种操纵性的又更进一步提升，所以它经常被用于改装、携带反装甲武器等等的，去作为攻击对方车辆或者载具的一种重要的平台。
China claims sovereignty over democratic Taiwan and has been stepping up its military pressure in recent years. Taiwan has been building up its drone manufacturing capabilities as part of an asymmetric war strategy, to give it the best shot at resisting an enemy with much more firepower. And according to the UK's Financial Times, Taiwan and US drone companies are now looking to work together to create a drone supply chain that does not rely on China, which has the world's biggest drone industry.
More than 20 executives from US drone manufacturers are in Taiwan on a 4-day trip, looking for partners. It's a chance for Taiwan to deepen cooperation with its most important international backer, as well as give its forces a better chance on the battlefield. Klein Wong and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, bad news for scammers. New laws may block them from using one of their preferred means to commit fraud.
Hi, Paris! How are we feeling today?
Get ready to rediscover an unforgettable summer where 24 Taiwanese performance groups made an impressive display in the heart of Paris. Their artistic prowess showcased the best of Taiwan with pulsating music, energetic dance, and a truly creative vibe.
Taiwan in Motion, coming Sunday, September 29th, 9 p.m. on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Tackling scam groups is a constant challenge for Taiwan's police as new cons emerge all the time. But there's a new strategy afoot that could cut scammers off from one of their favorite tools. John Van Trieste reports.
A raid on this office turns up evidence of a scam that swindled 18 mostly older people out of a cool $6 million worth of property. Police suspect the notary who drew up the legal documents involved may have been in on the scam. This scam ring may be busted, but Taiwan's fraudsters are a resourceful and determined bunch, siphoning around 1% of GDP per year. But it could soon be much harder for scammers to find victims. The digital ministry is planning new rules on online ads, a favored tool of scam groups.
网络广告平台如果经过通知，它要移除这个大气广告的期限，我们按照一般的是24小时，也跟业者讨论，他们也可以接受。
People who buy ads will also have to register with their real names, making it easy to track them down. And there will be pressure on platforms to comply, with maximum fines of up to $800,000 in extreme cases. Working with scammers could become just too much trouble anyway, because on top of this, platforms will also have to file annual compliance reports. All this may not wipe out scam ads completely, but even if trawling the net for fake ads becomes a cat-and-mouse game, the idea is to make it an expensive and risky one for scammers to keep playing. It's an idea anti-fraud NGOs are behind. Enforcing the rules may not be easy. Finding scam ads early will be key, and police say there may be other challenges.
通常他已经上去，如果说他在这个网络上时间越久的话，那当然了，这个被害人数可能就会增加。通常这个都是用空头的账号啊，或者是在境外的 IP 啊，来注册来做这个申请，挂上这个名义啊。最主要是要下架。
But the aim is to regulate the scams away, using the law to strip criminals of one of their most powerful weapons. The new rules could be enforced by the end of the year, something the government hopes will make a dent in a national problem. Ryan Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Police in Malaysia say they've rescued 187 more children from an Islamic business group suspected of child abuse. That brings the total number of children rescued from homes linked to the global Ikhwan service and business to 572, while more than 350 people have been arrested. Investigators say the children were exploited for public donations and that many show signs of neglect and sexual abuse. Some of those rescued are as young as 5 years old. The case has raised concerns about the welfare of children in care facilities and the regulations for charities in Malaysia. The U.S. Biden administration has proposed banning Chinese technologies in connected vehicles over national security concerns. The regulations would prevent auto companies from selling cars in the U.S. that contain key components or software from China or Russia. The U.S. Commerce Department says this software could be used for surveillance purposes. The new rules would apply to all vehicles in the U.S. that allow data sharing with external devices and cars with automatic driving systems. The proposed ban would go into effect for vehicles in the 2027 model year. It's been rocky times for Intel, the legacy chip firm, which has lost over half of its value this year. Shock offers have come in, including a friendly takeover bid by Qualcomm, as well as a $5 billion private equity investment in attempts to prop up the company, with Intel being the U.S.'s biggest horse in the global race for chip supremacy. The stakes are high. Joyce Sung reports.
Struggling to stay competitive, U.S. semiconductor giant Intel has become a takeover target. Its younger rival Qualcomm has offered a friendly buyout of the 56-year-old company in what could be a historic merger and acquisition deal. It isn't the only player. Private equity firm Apollo, already a partner of Intel's Ireland site, has made a multi-billion-dollar investment offer, a sign of confidence in Intel's turnaround strategy. But industry watchers say it may not be money that Intel needs, but time.
The company has not performed as well as it needs to, but the turnaround is not a short-term turnaround. This is not a quarterly or 6-month or on any Wall Street timetable. This was more than a decade of mistakes that had mounted. It was missing AI. It was falling out of mobile. It was its breakup with Apple. Where if I was the board, I would say somewhere between 3 and 6 more quarters of committing to this plan is going to be the minimum to really understand if a turnaround is there.
As part of the company's turnaround strategy, Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger split its core chip design and computer processor businesses from its foundry or chip-making operations, creating a separate entity for the latter to give it its own board and raise its own funding. Intel is at the forefront of the U.S.'s stake in an increasingly politicized chips industry, a sector crucial for advanced tech like AI and national security, and at the heart of Washington-Beijing competition for tech supremacy. Intel is the biggest winner of direct investment from U.S. President Joe Biden's CHIPS Act, the president's signature policy to revive American chipmaking. Intel was granted $8.5 billion in subsidies, a sum that Washington delayed giving amid the company's poor performance.
Intel fails, my worry is the CHIPS Act fails with it. Without Intel on the leading edge, we're not helping. The only other partners are Samsung and TSMC, and they're not American companies.
Chips market analysts are skeptical a Qualcomm takeover will actually happen, given antitrust and regulatory challenges. But there's optimism for Intel finding a way out of its troubles on its own, buoyed by the company's still profitable market share in personal computers.
It's sometimes darkest before dawn. And I genuinely do think that there's a lot of, sharks swimming around Intel right now because it has been really dark. But I actually think they're doing better now than even 2 or 3 years ago, but this all had to fall apart first.
As the company pilots its new strategy, it's already scoring a win, with major customers Microsoft and Amazon committing to keep using Intel-made chips, the legacy firm's ongoing fight to stay competitive, closely watched not just by its shareholders, but also by Washington. Devin Tai and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
Architectural designers and environmental startups in Germany are teaming up to create a structure that helps bring both comfort and environmental benefits to city dwellers. Irene Lin takes a look.
This wooden structure might be the best new hideout from a scorching hot day in the city. The display at the London Design Festival is called The Vert. It uses 25 species of annual climbing plants that provide shelter and a cooling effect. Stefan Dietz, a designer based in Munich, Germany, is behind this creation.
In Vert, we are growing yearly plants, yearly fast-growing plants like morning glory, some kind of beans and hops, for instance. They grow up to 10 meters in 1 year, providing shadow, evaporation, a cool breeze.
Rapid urbanization and climate change has turned some parts of the cities into what climatologists call heat islands. Densely populated concrete jungles that easily trap heat. For the London Design Festival, Dees teamed up with the Office of Microclimate Cultivation, based in Frankfurt, Germany, which specializes in developing greening solutions for urban areas. Its co-founder explained another sustainable use for the vegetation in the structure as an energy source.
As these climbing plants are based on a seasonal cycle, what we do in autumn is that we harvest the whole biomass, and then depending on the local infrastructure, we can, for example, turn them into compost, energy, or even biochar, and by that return the whole harvested biomass into the economic cycle.
Beyond the hard science and activism, Dees says the structure easily integrates itself into people's daily lives.
This structure is, in a way, constructed like a street furniture. It's like a shelf that you put onto a place or on a street so the cars can still pass underneath, the bicycle can go underneath, people can still walk, but they can also sit and rest. And we want to offer a lot of things that people can do without that they have to immediately change their habits.
The team says the structure can help create a symbiotic relationship between humans and the environment in an urban space, and show people how saving the planet can be done with little disturbance and also with comfort and taste. Alex Chen and Irene Lin for TaiwanPlus.
And we'd like to thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Before we go, we bring you this preview of Japanese artist Yayoi Kusama's new exhibition, soon to open in London. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.